The Imperium does not survive on promises, it survives on those who accept accountability. When Aleph's first reports went hollow, and the channels opened only to return silence, responsibility did not knock on any lit chamber. It tugged at the sleeve of a quiet man. It found Spire. He did not argue about glory, because he understood glory as a consequence, not a motive. The only thing he audited was truth. Truth, on that day, was dirty. Warp interference fingerprints across transmission streams, an orphaned chain of non-imperial commands worming through cogitator veins, a cold pointer toward the Eye of Terror, signed with the arrogance of one who had burned more worlds than most admirals had years. No one mistook Abaddon the Despoiler's handwriting. His signature was brutal sloppiness. He hid nothing because he believed the prey would flee precisely when he wanted. The recall protocol arrived as scheduled. Spire did not receive it as relief. He read it as a unit of cowardice. In the hours when history opens its eyes, safety rules turn into leashes. If he retreated, the warp tear at Aleph would stabilize, and the Gothic sector would bleed to the murmurs of demons until another Blackstone lock was pried. If he refused, a chance thin as a needle flickered to collapse the newborn resonance. Only a man willing to be pinned to that needle could pass through. He did not ask anyone else to climb onto the point. He signed alone, and the signature was a plan for endurance. The plan was disliked because it was simple. Hold tempo, transmit truth, sacrifice with accounting. There are no pyrotechnics described here. There are decisions framed by discipline. He shifted all power to auxiliary channels, armed the station core scuttle, and set a countdown as a linear tyranny everyone could comprehend. No one would massage the speed. No one would remove a single second for themselves. In an honest campaign, each person is a measure, not an exception. Officers who had respected him from distance began to recognize something else. Respect is useless if it cannot be exchanged for stamina. Stamina is not a howl, but the repetition of an order in an unshaken mind. The same words, the same tone. Hold the line, choke the flow, send the data. Fear did not need defeating, it needed rank assignment. It walks behind duty, not beside it. The Inquisition would ask why he did not return. Spire prepaid that question like a loyalty tax. The Inquisition does not exist to pat the righteous. It exists to ensure even the righteous do not trespass the charter. So before anyone set out a chair for interrogation, he prepared reading material. He prioritized packets containing the enemy's warp withdrawal routes, often ignored amid the euphoria of winners and the nihilism of losers. The only way to converse with the Inquisition is to place on the table a benefit they cannot refuse, a blood map of chaos. Suspicion retreats when an imperial advantage acquires non-negotiable mass. In the hush of distorted channels, he gathered academy axioms. Strategy is the art of distributing losses. No one wins without losing something, and the hardest act is deciding where to lose so the remainder retains function. By refusing retreat, Spire accepted the deficit personally, a relief valve for the entire front. He knew he would be crushed between two forces, the outer sieging fleets, and the inner, the bureaucracy's requirement for immaculate decisions. His resilience did not live in sinew. It lived in his refusal to outsource blame for a choice that would kill many. There is an unwritten law of war.
The corruption is
Endurance
spreading
becomes a
faster than
language if
anticipated.
practiced long enough. Sailors no longer require slogans. They translate the commander's conduct into their pulse. They understand wordlessly that survival as individuals is not the target. Assigning meaning to death is. Death is not a garnish, it is a doorstop. When meaning is sufficiently clear, human beings stop meandering. Meanwhile, another truth crossed the corridor like a shadow. Abaddon does not care about single hulls. He cares about the rate at which an enemy's spirit dehydrates. If Aleph opens, Gothic erodes at a pace no one reverses. Spire decided to make pace his own. By setting the countdown, he coerced both sides into a tempo he authored. The one who sets tempo is attacking, no matter appearances. That is the instinct of a player who understands the game. No one can make you defend if you own time. Then coincidences began to line up. The encryptors finished a heartbeat before interference dipped. The scuttle teams met standard ahead of schedule. Internal comms stayed clean of speculation, not because fortune smiled, because the commander refused to subsidize narratives that did not serve function. He did not insult fear, he starved it. Starving things grow quiet. Field notes sent to Port Moore started collecting phrases theorists love to plagiarize: sacrifice with purpose, choosing the site of loss, imposing conditions on the foe. But those are masks for a plain truth. Spire wanted to purchase time for the Imperium. Time is the only currency against an enemy carrying infinite enthusiasm for ruin. Everything else, munitions, plating, liturgy, is a payment instrument. If Aleph became the valve that bled Abaddon's schedule from the first step through the door, the campaign thereafter, however savage, would unfold on ground negotiable by will. When he confirmed the dispatch of the final packet, he did not pray for a miracle. He audited prerequisites. Would the Imperium receive it? Yes. Would the Inquisition obtain a piece of evidence heavy enough to suspend suspicion? Yes. Would the defensive rings acquire a reason to stiffen? Yes. Would the public possess a story simple enough to carry? Also, yes. Someone stayed to lock a door. That is all a civilization requires to keep its psychological train on the rails. Great things sometimes depart from a reason small enough to fit in the palm. If asked whether he feared, the honest answer would be yes. Fear does not make him special. It makes him similar to everyone assigned a place inside a system that must endure. The difference is placement. When fear walks behind, it pushes. When it walks ahead, it drags. Pushed systems advance, dragged systems not. He ordered fear the way he ordered formations. In war, order is ethics. As the countdown closed its last integers, Spire thought of sailors he would never meet across generations who would retell this day with edges polished by time. They will insert beams and paint heroism. He had no quarrel with that. Myth fuels the masses. But he hoped one small thing would survive the gilding. The refusal to retreat was not the impulse of a blood-drunk man. It was the ledger of a custodian. Someone had to do the math, and the answer is routinely loss. If later generations stand on a deck at all, it is because somewhere, someone balanced the numbers. So when Aleph became an exclamation point in the Chronicle truly wrote one unadorned line: a door that should have opened was locked. Sometimes the dignity of an empire is guarded by its ability to conclude a sentence. No trumpet, no sparks, only a full stop. The man who placed it understood that reduction is the highest form of control. Spire did not think of death as a private ending. He thought of it as the sign for a shift change. If asked to whom the shift was handed, there is no proper name. It was handed to whoever hears responsibility without being reminded. On that level, every story is the same. The only difference is the moment you sign for where you will stand. At Aleph, Spire signed. That is why, in later musters, when Spire's name is read, the silence that follows is not reserved for mourning. It is used to accept the shift, each in their way, all by the same process. Inhale discipline, exhale duty. Thus the Imperium continues. Part 2. The doctrine of the one who never retreats. They say strategy belongs to survivors, but Spire did not live to play the game, he lived to teach it. And his lesson, written in blood and discipline, became the doctrine of non-retreat, etched into the naval academies of the Imperium as an oath. Centuries after Aleph, he would be called many things: reckless, obstinate, heretic, who defied recall. Yet admirals who truly understood knew better. Spire did not disobey orders, he redefined them. An order is only ink until someone accepts accountability for making it real. In the reality of Aleph, retreat was not a tactic, it was a trap. If the Imperium pulled back, the warp gate would remain open forever, linking directly to the Eye of Terror. From that bridge, the Gothic sector would drown in demonic fleets, the Blackstone fortresses would fall, and history itself would bleed. Spire understood that fully. His choice to stay was not to die, but to reconstruct the meaning of loyalty.
And countless
In his
challenges.
doctrine, loyalty does not mean blind obedience. Loyalty means understanding the ultimate objective of the Imperium. And when conditions change, loyalty
This
must
sector
restructure
presents a
itself.
significant tactical
A truly
challenge for
loyal
us.
man does
I
not
agree.
wait
The
for
enemy's
orders.
deployment here
He
is
acts
unexpected.
because the order already lives within him. Thus, Spire's death was not a failure. It was a moral victory, the kind earned by those who understand that survival is not the goal, but the instrument. After Aleph, the Inquisition convened 12 post-battle tribunals. They dissected every second of data transmitted from the Hammer of Wrath. They wanted to know how a ship captain could decide to stay, violating direct recall. Then they discovered that every command Spire gave was legally embedded in wartime protocol. Nothing unlawful, only something beyond fear. In an archived fragment, recovered from More 12 divided by decree, his handwriting reads, "If one step back costs 10 worlds, then one step forward at the price of 100 ships is still the correct calculation. In void warfare, a man's worth is not measured by breath, but by the pulse his decision leaves behind." That phrase became the root of the counter-tempo doctrine, based on his principle: he who controls the tempo controls time. He who controls time controls war. Spire knew chaos could never be destroyed, only delayed, slowed, forced to react within the rhythm of mortals. Aleph was the perfect rehearsal. By setting the countdown, he forced Abaddon to act within human time. Spire's death, therefore, was not defeat.
Unlike any
it was the
star
imposition of
chart
condition.
I have ever seen.
He died precisely when he chose to, before his enemy could seize the tempo. That single instant would stall Abaddon's entire crusade for years of galactic time. In the academies of strategy,
the greatest threat
a quote
grows from
circulates
within,
whenever Aleph is
not
studied.
merely beyond.
A commander who never retreats may die, but his doctrine outlives every ship he ever commanded. Records show that Spire's doctrine was later applied during the Tarsis counteroffensive, where the Imperium recaptured 3 Blackstone fortresses from Chaos using a maneuver called Tempo Collapse, a mirror of Spire's method of time inversion, forcing the enemy to fight within an alien rhythm. They called it the Aleph effect, an effect not of fortune, but of one man's willingness to redefine every law of engagement. But that doctrine grew beyond academies. It became faith, a religion without gods. At every Imperial naval oath ceremony, cadets recite the Oath of Aleph. I swear never to withdraw from the front until the meaning of my mission is complete. I swear never to surrender the rhythm of battle to the foe. I swear that if my death preserves time for the Imperium, I shall welcome it as reward. Nothing holier exists than stepping voluntarily into darkness to keep a gate closed, and Spire did it without witness, praise, or expectation of remembrance. In the final Inquisition report, Inquisitor Horst, the man who once interrogated him, wrote a single
The
line.
Aleph effect,
He did
while
not
devastating,
retreat, not
reveals
out
a
of pride,
tactical
but because
vulnerability.
no one behind him could replace him. That line became a
The
brass
Enema fleet
plaque
is
on
attempting
every
to flank
warship's
us through the
deck.
asteroid
If none
field,
can replace
Inquisitor.
you, stand firm. Spire's doctrine is not just about war, it is about the integrity of man within chaos. For in Warhammer 40,000, where the galaxy is swallowed by deceitful gods and endless
The Imperium
screams of the
expects
warp,
unwavering
the last
loyalty
light that
and
endures
unyielding
is
service.
not faith but the will to keep rhythm. Spire is gone, but his rhythm beats in every plasma cannon, in every warp ping, in every battle cry of "For the Emperor," echoing through the void. It is the one doctrine chaos can never counterfeit, the doctrine of a man who knew he would die, yet chose the moment when that death would mean something. Part 3. The Blood Map of Chaos. Among the final data transmitted to Port Moore, only 16 megabytes could be decrypted. The rest was noise symbols seemingly written by the warp itself. But those 16 megabytes were enough to reshape the entire Imperial theory of war. They contained the Blood Map of Chaos, a chart of warp routes used by Abaddon and the traitor fleets across millennia, linking the Eye of Terror to every shadowed corner of the galaxy. No one knows how Spire acquired it. Some believe he hacked the demonic relay itself. Others whisper of a fleeting pact with an Eldar Corsair. The method no longer mattered. The result did. For the first time, the Imperium could see the logic of chaos. The map was not merely navigation, it was the strategy of the dark gods made visible. Its warp lines ignored physics. They obeyed temptation. They curved through sectors where human faith was weakest. Worlds rotting from bureaucracy,
The warp
Colonies
routes
where
are
prayers had
expanding.
turned into routine. Abaddon did not choose the shortest paths. He chose the most corrupted hearts. By sending that map, Spire forced the Imperium to confront a cruel revelation. The enemy does not come from beyond, it grows from within. When the High Lords of Terror received the data, they fell silent. For 3 days, no decree was issued. Then came Imperial Decree 888 M42. Henceforth,
The Aleph turn
all
shifts our
campaigns
focus from
against
planetary
chaos shall be
conquest to
planned
spiritual
not by
subversion.
geography, but
These
by
warp
faith.
anomalies aren't
For the
just
first time, war was defined by belief. Historians call that
The strategic
shift
implications
the
of
Aleph
tempo
turn, the moment
collapse
the
are
Imperium
undeniable.
understood that to defeat chaos, it must weaponize
the
conviction
Imperium,
itself.
we shall
Spire
stand,
never lived to see
united
it, yet every
and
line he left
unwavering.
pointed there. He once wrote, "Every physical map has its spiritual twin. If we cannot chart belief, every strategy is merely repetition of fear." From his data, the Adeptus Mechanicus and the Inquisition jointly created the Rhythm Control Division, a network of sensors that monitored warp vibrations and mirrored them against the collective psyche of imperial populations. Where faith was strong, the warp thinned. Where doubt festered, the warp thickened. Human will, it seemed, was the true bulwark against damnation. That insight came directly from Spire's legacy, the will to keep rhythm. Keeping rhythm ceased to be a battlefield slogan. It became the governing principle of civilization. Planets began training priest-navigators' souls, both cleric and pilot, whose role was to stabilize minds so warp storms could not feed on chaos. Naval academies added the Aleph doctrine as a compulsory creed. Every cadet required to memorize Spire's final 3 lines. If the warp is an ocean, we are its tide. If chaos is a scream, we are the breath. And if death is an ending, we shall make it the signal to begin. Though long dead, Spire became a spiritual archetype for a generation of commanders calling themselves Aleph-born. They carried a single axiom: no victory counts unless measured by time bought for others. In later wars, whenever a commander stood on the brink of annihilation, they did not request evacuation. They asked one question: how many minutes must we hold for the next generation to have a chance? If the answer was 5, they fought 5. If 10, they fought 10, not from hope of survival, but from comprehension of Spire's truth. Time is the unit of sacrifice. Yet the blood map was more than a strategic tool, it was a mirror of guilt. Commanders studying it realized the warp routes of chaos passed through sectors once loyal to the Imperium, now rotted by fear and greed disguised as faith. The Imperium was forced to look into its own fractures, the very cracks the enemy used to invade. That was Spire's greatest bequest. He did not only point toward victory, he pointed toward the disease within victory itself. A civilization cannot endure on perfection. It endures on its ability to recognize its own decay before its enemies exploit it. The blood map became the Imperium's confessional. Centuries later, whenever a system faltered, Spire's quote echoed through every Vox channel of the Navy: "Do not ask where they are, ask how they found us." For sometimes, the enemy does not travel through space, it travels through fear. And because of Aleph, humanity learned that fear too can be conducted by rhythm. Keeping rhythm is not merely a tactic, it is how a species stays human in a godless cosmos. Spire is gone, yet when warp storms roar, Vox operators still detect a phantom signal with the call sign SP88R.
How they found
I do
us.
not retreat. Keep rhythm. No one knows its source. Some say
How they
it is
found
the
us.
echo of a machine spirit embedded in the hammer of wrath.
Do not
Others
ask
believe
where
it
they
is
are.
Spire himself,
Ask
eternally
how they
patrolling
found
the
us.
edge of the Eye of Terror, ensuring that the gate he once closed never opens again. Testament to the next watch. No one stands forever upon the bridge. Every admiral,
Call
no
sign
matter how great, must one day step away from the rhythm they set.
Keep rhythm.
But within the Imperium, some do not step away to end their story. They leave a testament for the next watch. When the last fragments of Aleph's data were decrypted, archivists found a single locked file, sealed with Spire's gene code. When opened, it contained only an audio log, no image, only his steady, calm voice.
The file is
If you
yielding.
are hearing this, my part is complete. Do not worship me. Do not build statues. Build better ships. Do not
I have
remember
waited
me
an
with tears.
eternity for this
Remember
moment
me
to
with
come.
discipline. And if it becomes your turn to stay
Do not
behind,
worship me.
remember, do
Do
not
not
wait
build
for
statues.
a miracle become the miracle.
Build better
End.
ships.
It was Spire's testament, not to the Emperor,
Do
nor
not
to
remember
the
me
Imperium,
with tears.
but to those who would take the next
Remember
watch.
me with discipline.
His first successor was Admiral
And
Cassian
if it becomes
Vaughn,
your turn to
once
stay
Spire's
behind,
student
remember,
at Portmore Academy.
do not wait
Vaughn
for a
was
miracle.
unlike his mentor,
Become
impulsive,
the miracle.
fiery, convinced that victory could be forced by will. Yet when he heard that recording, something inside him shifted. He understood that strength is
Spire's
not in shouting
log,
louder,
cycle
but in
307.
enduring longer. He renamed
Our
his
reconnaissance
fleet
of the
Watch
Outer Rim
Eternal
continues.
and carved Spire's words onto every hull. Be the miracle. Is. Under Vaughn,
Rename the fleet.
guarded the border of the Eye of Terror for 3 centuries, fighting thousands of battles without a single retreat. They no longer believed in total victory. They believed in continuity, believing that each generation is merely one beat in an endless symphony called the Imperium. Centuries
Simply
later,
reported for
an
the next
anonymous
watch,
historian in the
where
Terran
time is not
archives
measured
wrote,
in years,
Spire
but in
did
loyalty.
not die at Aleph. He simply reported for the next watch, where time
When
is
my
not
turn
measured
comes,
in years, but in loyalty. That
I will
line
not
is
fear.
carved on the Portmore Memorial. Every graduate of the Academy places a hand upon it and swears, when my turn comes, I will not fear. Another legend, whispered among the navigators, claims that within the warp, one can still glimpse a lone, Dauntless-class cruiser orbiting the edge of the Eye of Terror. It attacks no one, retreats from no one, simply holds its station, as if still guarding the gate it once sealed. Those who see it say they hear a voice in their minds, the same one Spire
Spire's
spoke with before
unwavery
the end.
voice.
The gate opens only when men stop keeping rhythm. The Imperium will never stop needing successors, for war in this galaxy has no conclusion, only continuation by those who stay when others depart. Thus, each generation writes a new line into the testament of Aleph, a living diary of an unending will. One entry from the 42nd Millennium reads, "We are not immortal, but as long as we hold
The
rhythm,
void tests
we live in
us
every
all,
minute, bought
but
with
in
blood."
unity
Another
we shall
from the
prevail.
43rd Millennium. We do not fight to be remembered. We fight so that no one forgets what must be protected. Over millennia, the testament to the next watch ceased to be a military document. It became a living scripture. Commanders recite it not to seek courage, but to remind themselves they are a single pulse in a rhythm that must never stop. No one remembers Spire's face, yet everyone knows what his name feels like. It feels like responsibility, a force that asks for no glory, only presence. One of the final lines of the testament reads, "If the Imperium falls, do not weep, for what made us great was never victory, but how we fell. We fell having done all we could, holding rhythm to the final breath, and in that breath echoes every soul who once stayed behind. That is the finest farewell a soldier could ever leave. No lament, no despair, only acceptance and inheritance. In the universe of Warhammer 40,000, where the light of mankind flickers against a sea of madness, Spire's heirs still stand the watch. Not to prove
Losing
something,
the
but to
perimeter.
ensure that the story does not end. For somewhere in the endless
There is
void,
nothing
his
more to
steady
be
voice
done,
still
acolyte.
resounds. I do not
Listen.
retreat. Keep rhythm. And if you are the next, begin. From Aleph to Vaughn. From Vaughn to uncounted generations after, that rhythm has never stopped. It is the rhythm of
Our
loyalty,
resolve
of
is
sacrifice,
forged in
of a
fire.
civilization that survives only because someone still chooses to stand in the dark. The Imperium endures not through miracles, but through those who understand that they themselves are the miracle. And that is the eternal testament of Admiral Spire, the man who taught a galaxy that no one is immortal, but will can be eternal.